Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to thank you all for joining our series on MIBS, which will be the star of the show. You're going to have a special treat today because we're going to be joined by Niall, who is the service as a true network as a service MIBS offering. Although the star is MIBS, I do want to talk to you all about some of the as a service offerings that don't fall under E-rate or MIBS, but just briefly, we do voice as a service, endpoint as a service, networking as a service, which is E-rateable, firewalls as a service. And just recently, we were able to partner with one of our leasing companies to do 0% financing. That's a big deal for a lot of our K-12 entities who don't necessarily have the funding all at once for some of their projects. So recently we had a school district that was looking to do disaster recovery backup as a service. They didn't have the funding to do the total project. We divided their payment by three equal parts, and they were able to get their rubric offering. This is a major deal for a lot of the smaller I'd like to call them underserved entities. And that's pretty much the sweet spot for DOF. We like to say we serve the underserved. So for many on this call, if you're not one of the major school districts in the Southeast or in Nebraska, you do understand the challenges. A lot of the school districts, as I mentioned, that were underserved, there's a challenge with resources. And when I mention resources, not just in the financial sense, but not having the staff or trained staff to take on the many challenges in the technology world. So if you're one of the districts who are supporting 750 to 1,000 devices users, you understand the challenges around managing that kind of environment. You don't have the time. You have many hats to wear. We just recently met with a school district in rural Florida. One of the challenges that they faced was that they only had a staff of 3 managing thousands of devices, but they typically before had shied away from managed services because they thought it was a challenge to their jobs. If they went managed services, why would you need them? Well, I've explained to this district and others, what it does is actually frees you up, gives you more autonomy to go take care of that principal, take care of the desktop, take care of the smart boards that you wouldn't be able to do because you were so focused on managing the network with limited resources, managing your voice, all of these different functions that if you could offload onto an able manufacturer, reseller, or partner, that would free you up and give you valuable time to take care of the other essential services that your customer, which is the teacher, which is the principal, could be supported. As we mentioned before, you don't have enough eyes and hands to do everything. You're going to need that able-bodied partner, the able-bodied partner such as DOF or Niall. This season has been terribly difficult for a lot of the school districts, and not just school district, just about any entity, whether you be government or K-12 or higher ed. The challenge that most districts are facing right now, or these entities are facing, is the challenge of security. How do we manage the ever-changing, challenging world of cybersecurity? This is another area that can be offloaded in your managed services. So you can do your firewalls and your networking on in E-rate. Start to take pretty much a breath or sigh of relief that you can have the visibility into your network. It gives you peace of mind. You've got that third party who's managing, auditing, monitoring your network, giving you timely update, doing patch management, all of that pesky stuff that you don't have the time to handle, and sometimes not having the expertise, not understanding what some of that data means. You're going to have the expertise to have a NIL to support you. NIL is not the only manufacturer or vendor that does managed services under MIBS, but they're very, very able-bodied. They take all of the responsibility off of your shoulders, and that's why we partnered with them. We think they're a great asset to any school district or library. MIBS is just another service under your category 2. For any of you that's currently doing your category 2, you probably have been doing conventionally getting your switches, your wireless, your routers via the category 2, having all of this, you owning the equipment. Managed services, now you can get timely upgrades to your equipment. You don't ever have to worry about the refreshes, that cycle. That's all going to be done by your provider. That really takes the headache away from you. You don't have to worry about those costly support costs. We've seen since COVID that the support cost, the cost of equipment has gone up exponentially. You sign your 5-year contract and you just leave the rest to us. Having the support of a service such as NIL, having DOF being here to assist you in this endeavor, really, it's everything from the assessment to the deployment. None of it is now going to be handled by you. It really does. When we say, a lot of times people say soup to nuts, this is truly a soup to nuts offering. One of the things that I do love about a managed service offering is that it can scale to your requirements. A lot of times you might have an influx of students or users. Now the dilemma is, how do we manage that? Well, you've got a true partner that can help you with that. You're not going to be diminishing the quality that you have. These NIL, I like to say, is the cousin to Cisco. NIL was founded by John Chambers, who founded Cisco. And this is the sort of the aha moment of the Cisco engineers. They came up with an offering that they weren't able to do some of these things under Cisco. They're doing it under NIL, and very affordable. They have the benefit of understanding the challenges that many customers and users like yourself faced that they weren't able to address before, they're addressing now. You don't have unpredictable budgets anymore. Once this cost is set, it is set in stone for that period, that term that you've signed for. Hopefully, as you all have been on these series that we've been doing, this is the first time you're hearing me. Bear with me, I'm a bit nervous. I'm not as good as the usual presenter. But as you've been exposed to our webinars, what we've been presenting over the past few months, we have tremendous expertise in E-rate. I've been doing E-rate for about 20 years, support many school districts in Florida, and I think any one of them would have given a resounding vote of confidence to what I've been able to do for them. This is not a call about a webinar about ESSA, but a lot of the school districts that I've assisted were very nervous about the COVID narrative, and we were able to take them through that process flawlessly. And we'd like to do the same for you as you embark on this E-rate season, as you look at maybe considering the MIBS offering. I think this is the perfect time to partner with DOF and NIL. And with that, we'd like to turn it over to Niall.
Viv, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction and great overview of not only the challenges that K-12 technology teams face on a regular basis, but also just some of the advantages that they have within the MIBS offering within the E-rate program, where they can look at solutions that they might not have known about. They can help them offload some of that burden of network management to a provider like Niall so that they can streamline their technology plans and their efforts to become better partners with the administration of the district or the school and align better with the technology initiatives that the school is leveraging to drive better outcomes for their students and for their constituents as well. Before I begin on this slide, can we click the button a couple times to build out a couple of other bullet points that I have on this slide if you can? I apologize, but this deck is kind of built with some triggers in it. So if you could click the forward button a couple times, we'll build out the remainder of the bullet points. And as you're doing that, I'll introduce myself. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Shaman Anderson, and I am the K-12 practice manager here at NIAL. And for those of you who aren't familiar with who NIAL is, as Viv mentioned, there we go, was founded in 2018 by ex-Cisco execs Pankaj Patel, Sri Hasakode, Suresh Katakam, and then also John Chambers, the former CEO of Cisco and current chairman of the board, has actually put his name as a founder of our company because he really believes in the vision that Pankaj and team have created with our company. And what NIAL really is that cumulative aha moment of those minds who brought you the legacy networks that everybody is using and operating and managing as we know it today. And what that aha moment really entailed was based on some customer interactions that they had with the hundreds, if not thousands, of customers that they built relationships with during the last 30 years at Cisco. And really understanding that all of the great features and different attributes and protocols that came out through those 30 years helped them build out the functions and the benefits that they needed within their network. What that really did was create a mountain of complexity that was impossible to scale. And it made it nearly impossible to manage their networks without additional help from managed service providers who had intimate knowledge of their network from the deployment days all the way through the lifecycle management of that deployment so that they could go in there and kind of fix snowflake architectures and designs that a lot of organizations have with legacy networks. So in addition to being able to kind of take that feedback into consideration, really look at the fact that not only was it tough to manage these ever increasingly complex networks, it was almost impossible to secure them as well. With every new feature created another vulnerability, if not multiple vulnerabilities, which had to be secured. And as you can imagine, for K-12 technologists or any technologist as it would be, that becomes very, very challenging and takes you away from using technology to innovate the organization and move the organization forward on its digital transformation journey. So what Pankaj and team did was really take a clean sheet approach at looking at network architectures and the protocols associated with them and eliminating, hundreds of network architectures and thousands of protocols down to about, tens of architectures and hundreds of protocols that we leverage to automate network operations and automate the securing of the network for you in a single SKU, easy to consume network service that is provided to you in a very easy to consume OpEx consumption-based model. I mentioned that we were founded in 2018, but we came out of stealth into general availability in September of 2022. And during that short time, we've grown to almost 200 employees. We have applied for over 40 patents, with more than 10 of those patents being awarded to us. And then we've also received over $300 million in Series C funding, which is, I think, a really good indicator that what we're doing is certainly groundbreaking, and is an indicator that this is what NIAL is doing is not only groundbreaking, but it is the future direction of networking. Industry analysts like Gartner and Forrester have also recognized us in the Magic Quadrant for wired and wireless networking infrastructure solutions this year. While we didn't qualify to be on the quadrant, we certainly have made enough waves and made enough impact in the market today to be recognized, at least via a discussion within that wired and wireless networking Magic Quadrant this year. So what we've done here, primarily to kind of summarize what that clean sheet approach entails, was really eliminating layer 2 complexities and all the vulnerabilities that are associated within the network. What that allows NIAL to do is leverage AI and machine learning to automate the network operations that you and your team focus on a daily basis, and not only automate the network operations, but also build the network architecture that has security inherently embedded into its DNA. And so with that, what we do is with NIAL, by providing a network infrastructure completely as a service, we eliminate the needs for compromises in design. We eliminate the need for equipment compromises in equipment quality or capability, and certainly eliminate the need for overlooking network security as something that you just can't afford to manage or afford to consume at this time. It's all built into our service, which is 100% E-rate eligible under that Category 2 Managed Internal Broadband Services subcategory. To kind of talk about how we go about our K-12 unique offering that we built is what we wanted to do is right-size our service specifically with that K-12 and library customer in mind, and specifically so that we could ensure that our solution is 100% E-rate eligible to make things easy for consuming this network service. And so what that does is we provide enterprise-grade equipment, very robust APs with 4 radios, 4 antennas, and 4 spatial streams of traffic, both up and downstream at any given point in time. We're also leveraging very robust layer 3 switches that are all PoE plus capable, multi-gig capabilities as well as multiple gig capabilities for the uplinks within the distribution and access switches. So you can be rest assured that your organization and your network has the power it needs to run a high definition experience for your students and your staff. From a design perspective, we employ 1 AP per classroom, but also employ 1 AP for every 3,000 square feet for the common areas. So we stay away from putting in an AP in every other classroom because we want to make sure that you have high definition connectivity from wall to wall across the campus of the school or the library, and even outside the school walls if you require outdoor coverage as well. Then we also want to accommodate for the entire student population being assembled in a gymnasium or a cafeteria or an auditorium, should there be a need for network connectivity for those assemblies or testing activities that happen in those large common areas throughout the school year. And then finally, we will employ typically 2 wired ports per classroom in our design, but that's also something that we can fluctuate with based on your use case and your need. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that Nile is really built with security in mind, built into the DNA of our network architecture. And some of the ways that we achieve that are described on this slide right here. I talked about the automation that's built into the Nile Cloud Management Platform, and what that does is really eliminate the possibility for human error in configuration, as well as then updates that are made to the network after the initial configurations take place. So all configurations are pushed down from the Nile Cloud Management Platform, as well as automated software updates and security patches that happen throughout the life cycle of that network contract as well. So know that these are all being done by an automated and proven process within the Nile Cloud Management Platform that will ensure that you're not going to suffer a security attack as the result of a human error in configuration. And not only will you have that automation to help set up the network and update the network, but that automation is also going to continuously monitor and manage the network for you as well. But we at the same time giving you visibility into the network so that you can maintain that it's operating properly and you have access to all of the applications that you need, as well as the platforms that ride on top of the network. In addition to eliminating human error, we've also built in zero trust isolation into our network as well. So by doing that, we've built in the ability for all network traffic to egress northbound up to the firewall, and we don't allow peer-to-peer traffic in an east-west fashion within the Nile network. So what that does eliminates the possibility for an infected device to enter the network and start communicating with its peers within the network before any of it ever hits the firewall to be remediated against. Every packet within the Nile service block, within a device that enters the Nile service block, will be again sent northbound up to the firewall, and really we leverage that firewall as that central policy management for the network and security policies that you want to extend throughout the network as well. So again, what we do is provide some dynamic isolation of each device on the network so that if it's infected, it cannot proliferate that malware throughout the network. It has to go up to the firewall to be recognized, responded to, and remediated appropriately. And then lastly, one thing that we also do as part of our networking DNA or our security DNA built into our network architecture is that every device, both wired and wireless, personal device or an IoT device, is authenticated to enter the network. And so that's done by either 802.1x authentication via a Radius server or through single sign-on solutions like Okta or Google Classroom or the Google Classroom platform. You can leverage those as a way to authenticate every device that comes onto the network as well. Next slide, please. I mentioned as well that what Nile does is provide network infrastructure completely as a service. And part of the service is providing service level agreements that we agree to maintain during the life of your contract. The first and most important one of those is the proactive incidents response and resolution. The cloud management platform is constantly monitoring your network, maintaining the network, and providing changes to the network to ensure optimal connectivity at any given point in time during your contract. And that proactivity, again, typically makes us aware of any kind of network issues before you or your users ever experience them. And we typically resolve them before you even experience an outage or have a support ticket submitted to you to resolve the network issue that's being perceived by the user. But should an incident actually get through to you, you are able to resolve that issue by having complete 24/7 access to the Nile Cloud portal so that you can monitor the network, identify all of the issues that might be happening within the network, and as well as use that portal as a way to contact support through either a chat window, a text email window, or a phone number that you can call as well during business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 by 5. The reason we have the limited support issues is because our goal from the Nile perspective is that we don't want K-12 technologists to ever be in the office beyond the 8 by 5 timeframe, and certainly not in there on Saturdays and Sundays resolving network issues. We're so confident in our service that we will ensure that you do not need to be in the office prior to the 8 o'clock start time or after the 5 o'clock end of the day, 5 p.m. end time of the day, so that we'll maintain that network and optimal performance for you throughout the life cycle of your contract. We'll also replace any failed hardware and we'll also be aware of that failed hardware through the Nile Cloud Management platform that we have. And so what we'll do is as we realize a piece of hardware has failed, we'll deploy a new piece of hardware to be shipped out from an Amazon business facility to your location, and we'll also notify the partner that piece of equipment needs to be replaced within 48 hours of it failing. And then finally, if you should have a need or for support outside of those Monday through Friday business hours, or you want to work with somebody so that you can schedule your software upgrades and security patches so that they happen at a time that doesn't interrupt the academic day, you'll be assigned a dedicated customer success manager who's going to work proactively with you to ensure you're having a great Nile experience. So you'll have somebody dedicated to your account who you'll work closely with to ensure the Nile service doesn't interrupt, the upgrades don't interrupt the day-to-day academic performance, and certainly ensure that you're having a good experience throughout the life of your Nile contract. Next slide, please. And if you could click the button one more time as well. Thank you. So I'm sure at this point you're thinking, this is awesome, but what does this really achieve for me? I've been managing my network as it is so far. I'm able to kind of set that network, and it does all right for an amount of time. But we're still not able to align our technology team with the academic vision and goals of the administration. So how is Nile going to help me become a better partner to the organization from a technology perspective? And that's really done through that automation that we provide. The automation fine-tunes the network so much that we reduce the number of support-related tickets by upwards of 95%. We have a customer in the School of Computer Science at Stanford University that, after deploying Nile, saw a 90% reduction in tickets that were network-related sent into the support staff. And even of the tickets that were sent into the support staff, most of those tickets were literally compliments for fixing the Wi-Fi. So you could almost say that potentially that Stanford might have had 100% reduction in network-related tickets, because the majority of the ones that were submitted were for complimenting them for making the switch to Nile. But I think what's most important about that is really quieting the noise that K-12 technology teams deal with on a regular basis. The inundation of support tickets that comes through their channels that really makes it difficult to focus on the projects that are really important to the organization. So by limiting and quieting the noise of tickets actually allows you to, speed up the time to resolution with our assistance as well, because we're proactively monitoring and managing the network for you. So you'll see up to a 25 times faster issue resolution than you would with a legacy network provider that you may be using today. And then finally, some other benefits that you'll see are really around that automation as well, where you'll always be running the most up-to-date code, and you'll always have the most up-to-date security patches to take into consideration all the vulnerabilities that are known out there in the cybersecurity landscape today. And what that does is really provide you with a better network security posture when you're entertaining cybersecurity insurance benefits. When you can demonstrate that you have taken and applied zero trust principles to your network security, you will win lower premiums as it relates to acquiring cyber insurance for your network and for your digital infrastructure as a whole. So there's a final benefit there. By leveraging a network that has zero trust built into the architecture of the network itself, will again benefit benefit you from a cost perspective as it relates to cybersecurity insurance. Next slide, please. So in summation, let's talk about what are some 5 key reasons why you might want to consider looking at NILE as a replacement to owning and operating your own legacy network. And so the first one of those compelling reasons would be based around our OpEx consumption-based model. Not only are we E-rate eligible, but we operate underneath the MIBS subcategory. So we require that you only pay for your service on a monthly or annual basis. And so typically what that looks like is a district or a library would put out Form 470 once in a budget cycle, and then submit a 471 each subsequent year to award that business to a specific manufacturer like NILE, and then request funding for an annual term of the contract. So our contracts are typically 5 years in term, and you will request funding for each and every year of that contract from USAC. And what that does is eliminate the need for being dependent on large capital projects to foot the bill for your portion of an E-rate project, and allows you to kind of have a lower entry point from a financial perspective to get an enterprise-grade network up and running in your school or district. In addition, the way we price our solution is really based on the project itself. So what that does allows you to really simplify the way that you go about acquiring your network infrastructure. And what that does is it eliminates the need for you to pursue refresh cycles or support or licensing renewal cycles as well. We offer our service under one SKU, and all hardware support, all licensing, all refreshes are included within that contract itself for the 5 years that we would sign it with you. And then finally, to kind of summarize the last 3 bullet points, it's really talking about that automation that we offer. And that automation allows us to share the burden of network operations for you so that your team can move away from the manual workflows of maintaining and owning and operating your own network, and really focus on those projects that, again, drive the educational outcomes forward for the students, the staff, and the community. It's going to minimize the amount of noise they have from the number of trouble tickets they typically see on a daily basis that relate to the network, and really allow them to focus on the true trouble tickets that are impeding the educational progress or the educational programming happening within the respective school or district. And then finally, you're always going to stay compliant because you can ensure that not only are you employing a zero trust network architecture, but you can ensure that the automation that we offer is going to ensure that you're running the most up-to-date code and the most up-to-date security patches at any given point in time during your contract with NILE. And that is essentially it for my presentation. I want to thank everybody, and if there's any questions about the NILE service or any questions about how NILE is E-rate eligible, I'd be happy to answer them now if we're at the Q&A portion of the presentation. If there are no questions, we'll go back to you, Viv.
Thank you. We want to make sure if anybody has any questions, please don't be bashful. I can safely say Shaven and I were probably as nervous as you are to raise your hands or speak. And
Absolutely.
We're a friendly crowd.
We are a friendly crowd, and exactly, it's always good to acknowledge the nerves that happen as we go to present. I think they're inevitable, but I thought, Viv, I couldn't tell until you mentioned it. So you did a fantastic job. So
same with you, Shaman. Well,
Thank
we
you.
want to wrap this up in a nutshell. And I'm glad, Shaman, you mentioned the benefits from the lowering the insurance premiums. I have numerous customers who every year have failed their audits because they didn't have NAC or other zero trust requirements. They weren't in compliance, so their insurance premiums keep going up and up. This service takes away from that. The other major point that Shaman raised, you don't have to come out of pocket with all of this capital to get your infrastructure the way you need it. Or I've seen a ton of times where my districts are trying to do their upgrades piecemeal. Now you can take a holistic view to upgrading your network, your environment, and that way you're not looking at just filling holes or throwing darts at a board. This is a very, very important consideration. And a lot of times I found that the IT staff is not able to convey some of these things to the management, superintendents. Let us be that voice for you and explain it. Usually I don't mention this, but my first career was in banking. So I have a very, very, very good understanding of fiscal issues. And a lot of times my customers utilize me in that way to convey the financial benefits of the programs that we suggest. The fact that you don't have costly ongoing support. Every year, that's a challenge even the larger districts, they're always surprised year over year at the cost of the annual support. There's none of that here. So any of you that's on this call that wants to see a demo, wants more information, wants us to conduct an assessment, please feel free to reach out to us. And with that, I want to thank you all for attending.